This is Forbidden Speech, the raw truth, with your host, Christina Rivera. In this Savvy Broadcasting series, we delve into hot topics affecting us all. With cancel culture and big tech censoring any opposing ideas and thoughts outside of mainstream ideology, it has become more important than ever that we tell the raw truth about everything from U.S. world politics, COVID, Christianity, and everything in between. We invite all points of view to come and share their perspective honestly and respectfully. Hi, Roger. Welcome to Savvy's newest series, the Forbidden Speech, the Raw Truth. We're so grateful to have you here. Besides being an amazing author and journalist, you're also the senior fellow with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. You've written 3 wonderful books and one that we're going to hit on today that is very important. The first 1,000 days. People do not realize how important the first 1,000 days are for mothers and their children. And you've done so much in the way of, enlightening people to childhood hunger, and that it's just not a problem overseas. It's actually even a problem in the U.S. So welcome to Savvy.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Delighted to join. Thanks for raising this issue and raising the clamor, as we say.
Absolutely. I don't want to get your last name incorrect. So say your last name, your full name for everyone.
Roger is my first name. Thurow is how I pronounce it, but I'll answer to Thurow. Whatever you want to say, it's fine. Thurow is good.
Awesome. So that way, if anyone wants to make contact with you afterward. But yeah, what brought you on this whole journey of fighting world hunger and really bringing awareness to this? How did this come about for you?
Yeah, so I had been a foreign correspondent with the Wall Street Journal for 20 years and was with the Journal for 30 years overall. And it was kind of in the midst of all that foreign reporting, mainly based in Europe and then in Africa, South Africa in particular, where then I really started looking into and covering stories of humanitarian stories of development issues, and was kind of writing about in the early part of this century, this new millennium of ours, after 9/11, in the president's kind of first joint session of Congress, and I was based in Switzerland, in Zurich, not writing about, the banks and financial issues for the Wall Street Journal, but about these humanitarian and development issues. And in that address, President Bush said something like, I imagine that you, my fellow Americans, are asking the same question that I and the members of my administration are asking. Why do they hate us so much? Why? What is behind these attitudes and motives that would cause such attacks and such actions? Mm-hmm. And I was watching that and I said, I've got a couple of ideas that from being overseas all that time and reporting on global issues, you can see kind of the impact, the unintended impact many times of kind of American policies, Western policies on people living around the world. And so I discussed with the editors of the Wall Street Journal, and they said, yeah, let's look into that. One of the first things we came to or started looking into was the impact of the Farm Bill on the impact and the global agriculture trade on particularly smallholder farmers around the world, and then was asking the question of why are the smallholder farmers, in particular Africa, so far behind farmers basically everywhere else in the world, and what was leaving us with this horrible, cruel irony of that the hungriest people in the world are smallholder farmers. So this hideous, obscene oxymoron of hungry farmers. So while reporting on that, it was in 2003. Here comes then the first great hunger crisis of the 21st century in Ethiopia. 14 million people on the doorstep of starvation. Surviving, if they're going to survive at all, by the food aid distribution, by the World Food Program. A lot of it coming from the United States and supported by the U.S. Mm-hmm. And so it was, looking at that and on that. So went to Ethiopia. First day in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. I'm speaking with people at the World Food Program, and one of them says, Roger, it was a piece of advice, but to me it sounded like a fairly ominous warning. Looking into the eyes of someone dying of hunger becomes a disease of the soul. what you see is that nobody should have to be dying of hunger, particularly not now in 2003, 3 years into this grand new millennium of ours, into this 21st century. What madness is driving us that we have brought this medieval suffering with us into the 21st century. And that was basically then the start of looking into this issue. And I realized, that then what we saw kind of in the emergency feeding tents, looking, and really looking at the human aspects and the human faces and emotions and the people behind these horrible hunger statistics and this hunger and malnutrition that we had brought with us into the 21st century. That did become a disease of the soul for me, in essence, that became the motivating factor of my journalism, of my passion as a journalist. This is the story I thought that all my reporting had led me to at that time, and continues to, writing about hunger and malnutrition in the 21st century and the various aspects of it. So that eventually leads me away from the Wall Street Journal now to writing books on this issue. And so, it's this disease soul that continues to propel me. And what brings me to your podcast today.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that you have reported on it and brought light to it, because you've written not just one book, you've written 3 books. Enough was the first one. The next one, The Last Hunger Season. And then the final one that we're talking about and going more deeply into today, which is 1,000 Days, the first 1,000 days, which is so important. And we talked before the interview on another call that even in the U.S., where we have a super abundance of food, that there are people and kids growing up malnourished. And I thought, wow, that can't happen. And it is, because a lot of the food with the preservatives and whatever are actually not even really food. It's like, I don't know, they're filling themselves with stuff, but it's not really sustainable. It doesn't have nutrients in it. It balled my mind that even here, where there's an abundance, we could have people who are malnourished.
Yep, absolutely. So it's not the most nutritious food, and oftentimes kind of the least nutritious food that families in the United States, and there's an increasing number of them, particularly during the COVID pandemic, as we've seen in all the kind of the epic, the television coverage and photos and stories of these epic lines of people in lines at the food pantries, at the food banks, and these pop-up food distribution points, in parking lots and whatever. And it's like, wow, so what's happening? And that hunger and food insecurity has always been here, but it's a matter that this has really brought it to the fore. And I think one thing, and Christina, to really amplify what you're saying, is that, certainly during COVID, we've realized that, look, there is no over there anymore in this world. It's all here. And so that, there are no borders that will prevent pandemics from sweeping around the world. There's no borders that stop the impact of childhood malnutrition in one part of the world or one country or one region of the world. It's an issue that impacts all of us and continues to abide with us. And so that, it manifests itself in various forms. And so in the first 1,000 Days book, I follow moms and their children through this 1,000-day period, which is from the time that a mom first becomes pregnant to the second birthday of the child. It's about 1,000 days. So follow moms and their children through that 1,000-day period in India, Uganda, Guatemala, and then Chicago here in the United States, to show, look, that it is also a problem here. And a lot of times it's just affordability, accessibility to foods, and its poverty is at the basis of it. Just kind of all sorts of then fundamental issues of equality, of inequality, of injustice, as I said, issues of poverty that are of an abiding systemic nature, and we see that all over the world.
Yeah. Now it's interesting to me, because I didn't know how important. I had seen a documentary a while back with, I think Oliver Stone. Was it Oliver? A guy from UK that came into the US to try to bring nutritious
Jamie
food.
Oliver.
Thank you. And
Yes.
It was interesting because there was a Hispanic family they had talked to, and they said, we want to buy fruits and vegetables for our children, but guess what? It's cheaper to get a burger at McDonald's, like the dollar burgers, than to get broccoli, which is $1.50 or $2, which we can't afford that. And how is that going to fill them up? Whereas opposed to getting a burger at McDonald's, that will fill them up, and they'll get the bread and the meat, and it might not be as nutritious, but we're giving them something to eat. So what can we begin to change and shift that? Because if the nutritious food that families can't afford, if they're on the, economic, make less money and whatever, what can we do to shift that? Because fruits and vegetables should be the first thing that kids go to.
Yep, well, exactly. So there's a lot of talk going on globally, but then also in the United States. And we've seen kind of the start of it now with the Biden administration, the USDA, kind of taking a look at the thrifty food, basket or calculations in terms of what they were calculating, the SNAP benefits, so the food stamp benefits, as it used to be called, so the SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Program, that, and have raised that, realizing that, the SNAP benefits that were there were based on, prices that were really outmoded. They hadn't changed and improved that for a long time. So looking at, well, what is the cost of nutritious foods and the foods that, would be most beneficial to people that are receiving the SNAP benefits. So by kind of adjusting that they hadn't done for a long time. So that's kind of one step.
And can I ask you something? My grandma lived in Manhattan. I don't know how feasible this is, but she used to grow vegetables on the fire escape. And I know it's not technically supposed to do that, but is that feasible for some families to maybe make their own food so that they've got an option if they can't get it at the grocery store? Sure.
Community gardens, kind of anywhere where you can grow gardens, kind of on your balcony, in kind of the flower beds that may be hanging, kind of outside a window or something. You can go grow herbs there, or tomatoes or beans or cucumbers or whatever you can grow there. That all helps because it's healthy. It's that nutritious food. It's the vegetables, that then are so important and vital. So there's a lot of kind of simpler, programs like that. They don't all have to be like big, huge federal programs that are addressing this. So there are things that individuals can do, but then there's kind of also this systemic, nature of let's improve, the access, the affordability kind of across society, to these foods.
Now, one thing I was curious about when I saw your book is why the first 1,000 days? Why is that so important for mother and child? What about that 1,000 days is so imperative for getting good nutrition?
Yeah, great question. So the 1,000 days has always been there. So it's not a new period. So this time of life. What is new is that kind of now the recognition of how fundamentally important that is, particularly on the nutritional front, and the access to proper good nutrition in that period that there is for the mom during pregnancy and then the child developing the womb, solely dependent on the foods that the mom is eating at that time and the good nutrition, hopefully that the mom can have, and then after birth, and then as one gets into if the child is breastfeeding, then that is coming from the nutrients that the mom is eating. And then once complementary and solid feeding then begins with the child. The good nutrition is so important. It's that period is the most important period, these first 1,000 days, in the healthy physical development of a child, setting the proper foundation for the growth, both physically and also the cognitive development of the child. There are so many things that are going on in the development of the brain in that time. Already while the child is in the womb, and then in these first couple of years after birth, all these neural synapses and everything going on with the neural connections that is so fundamental is all fueled by good nutrition that the mom and then the baby are eating. So it's the most fundamental, the most important time in the development of individuals, but then by extension, the most important time, the most critical time for the development, the healthy and strong growth and development of families, of communities, of societies of a whole, of countries, and the world as a whole. I mean, we talk about, well, the children are our future. Well, yes, they are, naturally. Then why aren't we insisting that all of our children, no matter where they are, get off to the best start possible in life? And that begins with the proper nutrition in these first 1,000 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I had a friend a number of years back who had two children back to back, and she was kind of very poor. And I remember her telling me, well, she ate a lot of the put together fast kind of fried foods and whatever. And later on, her two children were born with autism, and
Hmm.
she, lent it to me. Was it my nutrition? Did I help cause this? And I was like, you can't go there. And, maybe it's just genetic. Maybe it had nothing to do with their nutrition.
Right.
Maybe it helped. But you're right. I mean, uh, the best thing you can do, like you said, developmentally to help the child neurologically and in their body and go forward, is to give them a best start, at least with nutrition. If they do have something genetic, well, maybe you can't help there, but at least you give them the best forward and the best chance going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So here's one. So in my writing, I try to, my mantra as a journalist and as an author is to outrage and inspire. So outrage kind of, on this topic that, my goodness, what's wrong with us that we have brought hunger and malnutrition with us into the 21st century?
Mm-hmm.
In the book, The First 1,000 Days, I think the biggest outrage is that basically 1 in every 4 children in our world today, under 5 years old, 1 in every 4 is stunted in some manner because of childhood malnutrition.
Mm.
What stunting is, there's a clinical definition for it, and an academic and scientific and medical definition for it. And that's basically, that one is too short for age, right? So it's a height for age coefficient.
Yeah.
And okay, well, you can get your mind around that, but what that really is, what is stunting? It's a horrible, brusque, rude word, stunting.
Mm-hmm.
What that is, it's basically a life sentence of underachievement and under performance, which is basically rendered by the time a child is 2 years old. So what that means is, what are we losing? What might a child have accomplished for all of us were they not malnourished and stunted physically and mentally, and particularly the cognitive development in that first 1,000-day period? Look, it's like a song not written, or a song not sung, or a poem not written, or a novel not imagined, or a gadget not developed, or an innovation not nurtured, or a cure not discovered, a horizon not explored. This lost chance of greatness for any child in the world becomes a lost chance of greatness for us all, and that is a loss that is profoundly staggering when you think. But again, 1 in every 4 children under 5 years old in the world are stunted because of childhood malnutrition. Stunted children become stunted adults. It's something that goes with us all through life. So again, that, it's not just over there.
Yeah.
So a stunted child anywhere in the world, then we can see, becomes a stunted child everywhere, because we don't know what they could have accomplished for all of us.
So where are the solutions? What's the great solutions that anyone listening today can start to take in their community, where they are, to help end this?
Yeah, I think one, to raise awareness, educate yourself on this. What's going on in the local community? I think what we've seen during the pandemic is that hunger, food security is everywhere in our communities. It's in our neighborhoods. It's in our schools. It's in the people, that may be next to us in our houses of worship. People that we're encountering kind of every day while out shopping, while out running any errands or something. It's everywhere. And we've seen that in all these, the long lines. And maybe before we would look at them and we'd look at the food banks and the food pantries and say, oh, well, that's too bad. I wonder what happened to them. What did they do wrong? Now we realize, no, they haven't done anything wrong. Yeah. The economy's gone bad. The supply chain has disintegrated. There's illnesses. There's poverty issues that are behind all of this. Mm-hmm. So to kind of look at that in certainly a much more compassionate and empathetic manner, educate yourself, but then also raise that question, with politicians whenever they come by, with decision makers. Anytime you're at a city council or kind of a county meeting or state meeting or something, is, why do we have this problem in our neighborhoods, in our state, in our communities, in our country, in our world, right? Yeah. What does that say about us? Why do we tolerate that we still have this food insecurity among us? And if it's every, 1 out of 7 or 1 out of 10, adults, or, 1 out of, 7 families with children, or 1 out of every 5 family in our country that is facing some kind of food insecurity, which is basically defined as, at some time, during the month, during the year, those families are worried about where's the next meal coming from in terms of affordability. Now, we don't have time to prepare anything, but where's that money coming? Where's that meal coming from financially, affordability wise, to get involved in these issues in your communities? What's going on at the food banks, at the food pantries? These issues of, okay, what can we do with community gardens? What are the possibilities here? Who are the organizations that are working in those areas? What can we do at schools to make the school breakfast and lunch programs, these federally mandated programs, that they're as nutritious and healthy as possible? How do we end the food deserts in our midst?
Yeah, I love that you're mentioning that, because it's not just about just having something to fill people, but filling them with good, nutritious food that tastes great too.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that they found that was hard for kids to eat vegetables if they're not used to it is the idea that it tastes yucky, but you can make even nutritious foods taste great, and
right.
But first you got to be able to afford them.
Right. So afford them and that they're accessible, and that's the thing. Yeah. Kind of with food deserts, that kind of within a certain radius of where a person might live, there is no ready access to, in terms of, say, driving or even walking distance to fresh fruits and vegetables, to fresh dairy products, fresh meats, fresh animal sourced proteins and things, if that's what one wants to consume. In the absence of them, that there is then this overabundance of fast food, right? So in the book, the first 1,000 days, so as I said, so part of the place, one of the areas and regions of the world that I'm following moms and children is in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And at that time when I was doing the reporting, and the mayor of Chicago was Rahm Emanuel, and he said, and Chicago was the first major city to be mapped for food deserts, 10, 15 or so years ago, whenever that was. And he says that, where there's a food desert, he also sees like an opportunity desert, because where there's a food desert, there's most likely also a health desert, a healthcare desert, a jobs desert, a security desert, all these kind of issues and kind of social issues and problems that we're facing then kind of match up with the food deserts, right? So that all that is bound together. And he says, I worry about kind of the generation that is growing up thinking that the place where you get food is liquor stores and gas stations, right? Is that where they get their food at? Is that their expectations, right? Just because there may not be, there's no grocery stores in these areas. Now I live in Alabama. I'm at Auburn University, and in addition to the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and a scholar in residence at the Hunger Solutions Institute here at Auburn and the College of Human Sciences. And, as you go around to the cities and the rural cities in Alabama in particular, you kind of find all sorts of areas where there's no grocery stores. There's counties where there's no grocery stores as we would imagine. They might be smaller mom and pop things, or it's again getting food from gas stations or from dollar stores or something. And it's like, wow. So these food deserts are not just kind of something that's in an urban area or in a city, but they're kind of they're out there throughout rural areas as well. And so it's where's that access to affordable foods, and particularly more nutritious foods. But that also has to go with the structure of our food system. Yeah.
I totally get you, Roger. We could go on for hours here, but we do have to close on.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't want them to leave without finding out how they can get a copy of your book and find out more. The first 1,000 days, how can they do that and find out more about you?
Yes, they can go to wherever you buy books at, particularly online. I mean, if it's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you're getting books online, can go there. Either just type in my name or the first 1,000 days booked, and kind of all the 3 books will come up. I have a kind of a web, page that's part of the suite of sites at the Chicago Council. It's called outrageandinspire.org. So you can look there or find more background on me. Just, type my name into your Google search, and it'll come up. And what I can also do is I can send some links to you, Christine, if you want to then post them somehow.
Absolutely.
on kind of digital storytelling that we've done in addition to the book on the first 1,000 days. So one can, it's more visual, it's more graphic. And there's also one story about he was a young boy at the time. Now he's a young adult that I followed in Ethiopia from when I first met him in an emergency feeding tent in 2003 to now that he's about 20, 21 years old. And the last time I visited him in 2019, he was in the 4th grade. And so there you can see kind of the impact of certainly the hunger in the malnutrition in the early years of life and the impact that has throughout a person's life. And again, we see then from a malnourished child, stunted child, to adulthood and what the true impact of malnutrition, particularly in the first 1,000 days, is. So I can send links to you on those, and if you can post them and share them with all your followers and listeners, that would be great.
I will. Well, it's been such a great pleasure having you out here, Roger Thurow, to share your great expertise and to get everyone revved up and outraged and learning more about this and what they can do in their community. Thank you so much, Roger, for coming today.
Thank you, and I appreciate your time. And sorry for maybe talking too much, but I warn people: don't get me started. Don't get me started on these issues because we'll keep going. But thank you so much for raising the clamor on this issue.
You bet. You have a wonderful day. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more Forbidden Speech or Savvy episodes, visit SavvyBroadcasting.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.